Top 5 Best Walkie-Talkie for Long-Distance 2025 Two-Way Radio Communications. The first voice came through the static at exactly 2:17 a.m. "Anyone out there?" Ethan Cole froze on the fire escape outside his Brooklyn apartment, half a cup of cold coffee trembling in his hand. The city was quiet in that rare, breath-held way it gets just before dawn. He looked down at the walkie-talkie clipped to his jacket, an old habit he hadn't broken since leaving the Coast Guard. He hadn't turned it on for weeks. "Hello," the voice repeated, thinner now, edged with panic. Ethan pressed the talk button before he could talk himself out of it. "I hear you." There was a pause, then a shaky exhale. "Oh, thank God. I thought I was alone." The voice belonged to a woman, mid-30s maybe, calm but cracking. She said her name was Grace. She said she was driving through northern Ontario, somewhere between towns she couldn't pronounce, when her phone died and her car slid into a ditch. Snow was coming down hard. She'd found an old two-way radio in the glove compartment, probably left by a previous owner, and started calling out on instinct. Ethan closed his eyes. "Of all frequencies, of all nights. You're not alone," he said. "You've got me." 3,000 miles away, Grace Harper wrapped her coat tighter around herself and stared at the dashboard clock flickering like a dying star. The heater had given up an hour ago. Her hands shook, not just from the cold but from the fear she'd been holding back all night. She'd moved to Canada from Leeds 2 years earlier for a job that promised adventure and delivered silence. This drive was supposed to be a reset, a straight line through white forests and empty highways. She hadn't expected the ditch, or the dark, or the way the quiet pressed in until she could hear her own heart. When the stranger answered, it felt unreal, like a door opening in a place she thought had no doors. "My phone's gone," she said. "I don't even know if anyone will come this way." "We'll figure it out," Ethan said. His voice had that steady weight she remembered from her dad, back when everything felt fixable. "First, are you hurt?" "No, just cold." "Okay, stay with me. Tell me what you can see." By sunrise, Ethan had canceled his plans, pulled out maps he hadn't used since training, and called favors from people he hadn't spoken to in years. He wasn't a rescuer anymore. He repaired elevators now, lived a quieter life, tried not to think about the night his radio went silent during a storm off the Carolinas. But the old instincts woke up fast. Grace described the road markers. The curve of the trees. A broken mile sign half buried in snow. Ethan relayed everything to a volunteer search group in Thunder Bay, switching channels, adjusting ranges, testing clarity. The little walkie-talkie, cheap plastic, scratched screen, held on like it knew this mattered. Hours passed in fragments of conversation. They talked to keep the cold away. Grace talked about her mum's Sunday roasts, about how she missed the sound of rain on brick instead of snow on metal. Ethan talked about the ocean, about how radio chatter used to be the heartbeat of his world. They laughed once, surprised by it, when Grace admitted she'd always thought walkie-talkies were toys. "They're lifelines," Ethan said softly. The snow thickened. The search team lost the signal once, then found it again. Batteries dipped into red zones. Each time the static surged, Grace's chest tightened. "Don't go," she whispered once, when his voice faded. "I'm right here," he said. "I'll stay as long as this thing has power." In another part of the world, in a small town outside Manchester, 12-year-old Noah Blake sat on his bedroom floor surrounded by boxes. His grandfather's things, radios, mostly, old and new, lined up like memories you could tune into. Noah had always loved them, the way voices traveled invisibly, the way distance didn't mean silence. He clicked on one of the newer sets, testing ranges like his granddad taught him. The frequency crackled. A man's voice. A woman's laugh, tired but real. Noah sat up straight. He listened. He shouldn't have, maybe. But he did, and as he pieced together the story through bursts of static, something settled in him, something that felt like purpose. He grabbed a notebook and started writing down landmarks Grace mentioned. He pulled up maps on his tablet, tracing roads, counting miles. His fingers moved fast, heart faster. "Mum," he shouted down the hall. "I think someone needs help." By the time the search team reached the ditch, Grace's voice was barely more than breath. Ethan kept talking. describing the sunrise over the Hudson, anything to keep her awake. When headlights finally cut through the snow, Grace sobbed into the radio, a sound that broke and mended him all at once. "They're here," she said. "They found me." Ethan leaned back against the brick wall, eyes wet, smiling at nothing. "I knew they would." Before the battery died, Grace said, "Thank you for staying." "Anytime," he replied. The radio went quiet. Weeks later, Ethan received a letter with a Canadian stamp. Inside was a photo of Grace standing beside her repaired car, snow melting around her boots. She looked smaller than he'd imagined. Braver, too. At the bottom, a note: "I kept the radio. Just in case." That same day, Noah received a package from a radio club in Ontario, an invitation to join, a thank you for information he'd passed along through his mum to the authorities. His grandfather's old walkie-talkie sat on his desk, suddenly less like a relic and more like a beginning. And somewhere between Brooklyn rooftops, frozen highways, and a kid's quiet bedroom, voices kept traveling, finding each other across distances that didn't seem so far anymore.